Welcome to our weekly program, The Inside Story of Chabad in America through the Mindel archives. In the past few years, I have been sharing with you most of the time in this program from the archives of Rabbi Mindel, the Rebbe's personal secretary. Rabbi Mindel has an amazing, fascinating collection, having worked with the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, from 1940. He came with him on the ship. And then when the Rebbe came, our Rebbe, in 1941, he worked with the Rebbe on the same table. And he worked for the Rabbeim for over 50 years. He worked on the letters. He took dictation, English letters, Hebrew letters, Yiddish letters, Russian letters. And you heard stories from the Rebbe here and there that he wrote down. He was a writer. He used to write down every day certain things he heard from the Rebbe. Some things are known, some things are not known. He went shlichus for the Rebbe. The Rebbe sent him, as we spoke a few times already. And the Rebbe looked over everything that he wrote. He wrote my prayer. He wrote the philosophy of Chabad, the commandments, the Shulchan Aruch for children, Tanya in English, and Bichlal, talks and tales. This was by the Rebbe. This was like a sicha. The Rebbe has hagoes, notations, everything he wrote. Not only that, when he went to speak, they asked him to speak in colleges in the 60s, in the 70s. He spoke in YU. The Rebbe says, I'm sure you wrote down the speech. And he showed it to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe made hagoes, even notations on his speeches. The Tanya, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, when he reads the wonder of nature, kum bitzu Yerushalayim. So this was his job. This was what he did besides other things. So the last few years, a substantial part of the program was on Thursday night, and from today on, we're going to have our program on Mitzvah Shabbos. So today is the first time we're having it Mitzvah Shabbos. So there's a minhag on Mitzvah Shabbos to say a story of tzaddikim, of a tzaddik, of the Baal Shem Tov. But since now it's Mitzvah Shabbos, Breishis, I should start really with that story, but it's after Yom Tov. We just celebrated Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Aser Sumei Tshuva, the 4 days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and then Simchas Torah, and now with Shabbos Breishis, a month full of simchas, a month of tshuva, a yikedik month. So we should be mamshich, we should continue from this month. This is the 7th month, the month of Zatik for the whole year. So first of all, it's time to say L'chaim. Now it's Mitzvah B'Shabbat Bereshis, Mitzvah Simchas Torah, and especially I am an Eirach. I'm a guest, and a guest is usually has the koyach to give a bracha, and I'll tell you soon why. I didn't have this program for a few weeks already because I have a hoarse voice. As you can hear, now it's a little better. It reminds me, once the Rebbe had a hoarse voice. So the Rebbe, somebody asked the Rebbe, he should be mekatzer, maybe he shouldn't say Rashi, he should farbring less. So the Rebbe says, because my voice is hoarse, so daf Rashi leiden, Rashi should suffer. So anyway, I thought I would say a few things over here, some letters from the Rebbe. Now before I go, I'll tell you a letter from the Rebbe. So mentioning the word oirach, guest, when the Rebbe had a stroke, Rabbi Mindel, working with the Rebbe for so many years, he just didn't feel he couldn't go into the Rebbe. He was working with the Rebbe together on one table. His relationship with the Rebbe was something that, we can't understand. From 1941. So he works, so he couldn't go into the Rebbe when the Rebbe couldn't speak. The Rebbe wasn't feeling well. He just couldn't sit. So he asked Rabbi Groner, when the Rebbe will feel better, he should call him up and he'll see, and he wants to come to the Rebbe. Anyways, after a few months, the Rebbe, so he called him up, he says, the Rebbe is feeling better, he went to the Rebbe, and he comes into the Rebbe and he says to the Rebbe, I am an oirach, I am a guest. Oirach is oir ches. Oir means light, ches means 8. The 8th bracha should light on you. What's the 8th bracha? Refo'einu Hashem. In Shemon Esrei, the Rebbe should give you a refuah shleima, oirach. And so he told me that the smile that the Rebbe had when he heard that, he says in 50 years he didn't see such a smile. So here we see that a oirach can give a bracha. So I want to give a bracha, everybody. Now it's Mitzvah Shabbos Breshis, Mitzvah Simchas Torah. So it's a time to give brachas. And the bracha, you give a full bracha. Once Rabbi always reminds me of something. In Nesh Kestenbaum, there was a president of the Young Israel. I knew him very well. It was an Ogishet. So he once told me, he says, I needed a bracha from the Rebbe for refuah, for other people, a big bracha, a long bracha. But he says, I walked into the Rebbe and I said to the Rebbe like this, he said, he made Rebbe, he says, I need a long bracha, big bracha. But I don't want to bother you to give me a big bracha because you're a busy man and it'll take a long time. So just give me a shtickle bracha. So the Rebbe smiled and he says, Als ich gebe a bracha, gebe ich nicht kein shtickle. When I give a bracha, I give a full bracha. So when you give a bracha, you give bichlal a full bracha. So first of all, I want to say what you have to say, l'chaim. Today is Mitzvah Yontif, Mitzvah Shabbos, l'chaim, the Rebbe shall helfen that all the brachas that the whole month we should be mamshich from this month, I'll call Hashona Kula, l'chaim. By the way, talking about, before we mentioned about the secretary, as a Maimer HaMusger, I just want to mention that I have here a letter that Rabbi Chadakov, Olav Shalom, wrote about every maskir. There was a few maskirim. Rabbi Chadakov and Rabbi Mindel, they were the founders of Chabad. They came with the Rebbe. And then later on, they needed more maskirim. So Rabbi Chadakov wrote down the job of every maskir. So I just want to say, talking about maskirim, I have to give them credit that even according to Rabbi Chadakov, he appreciated. They all served the Rebbe with devotion, humility. He wrote, Kabbalah Seil, and Mesiras Nefesh. Rabbi Simpson was a devoted maskir. Rabbi Groner was a devoted maskir. Rabbi Klein was a devoted maskir. And Rabbi Zolzan Ogishet, Rabbi Krinsky was a devoted maskir. And he appreciated every maskir. They did the job, but they did even more than they were supposed to. So this is what Rabbi Chadakov wrote. But the relationship that Rabbi Chadakov and Rabbi Mindel had with the Rebbe, that's a different than the other maskirim. They started Chabad, and with them, this is how it's all started. But they needed more later, because Kinahar Lubavitch grew. So I just want to mention that. And as a matter of fact, I have here a siddur, and I don't know why after Gimel Tammuz this page was taken out. I think the Rebbe wanted to have it in every siddur. All the siddurim till Gimel Tammuz, the Tilas Hashem siddur, the Rebbe, and they wanted that it should be in the back. It says over here, in the back, it says Merkes, Meyisei Shal Kvei Dushas, says the Frierdiker Rebbe. Then it says Kvei Dushas, our Rebbe, Nossi, Harav Chadakov, Menahil, and Rabbi Mindel, Maski Rashi. That's it. This is how Chabad started. These are the maskirim. Later on, they had more maskirim because they needed help. But Rabbi Chadakov and Rabbi Mindel, they were in a different category. So since we say L'chaim now, it's after Yontif. So I want to share with you what Rabbi Mindel wrote, and the Rebbe made Hagoes on it, on these questions. Why do we say L'chaim when we drink wine and not on food and not on other water? Why bedafke on wine? So Rabbi Mindel wrote this down, and the Rebbe was Magiya this. So since it's after Simchas Torah, I want to share with you. He wrote like this: we learned in our Parsha Bereshis, Odom HaRishon, who sinned by drinking wine from the tree of death, while we stress that we drink wine of the tree of life. So by saying L'chaim, we make a separation between the tree of death, the wine, and the tree of life. Also here, he writes, and all the Hagos from the Rebbe. Also the Rebbe writes here, because wine was the cause of curse that came over the world in the time of Noach. Noach became drunk, and we know what happened after Noach became drunk. It says in the Torah. So when we have wine, we pronounce to the people, and the Rebbe writes, Savri Moronon, that we drink wine. We only want to say L'chaim, its strength, and not its damaging power. And the Rebbe underlined strength. Then he brings down from Gemara Sanhedrin that it says, the procedure of an execution of someone condemned to death. So on the way to the execution, we give the convict a cup of wine as an act of grace. Rabbi Mindel wrote another word, but the Rebbe put the word grace in English. So he will become slightly intoxicated, so they will not be fully aware of the fate of facing them. There's a difference, to make a difference between the cup of death and the cup of life. That's why we say L'chaim on wine. Also, he says over here, an oval, a person mourning, we give him wine. So in order to difference between the sad occasion and the happier moment, when we drink wine, we say L'chaim. So the Rebbe ends off over here. There are many more reasons given the idea that is expressed in all these explanations, is that in wine is both the power of good and the power of bad, or life and death. When we say L'chaim, we tell us and others that we only wish to consume the good, not the harmful of wine. And we say L'chaim together. L'chaim, you spell is Lamed, Ches, Yud, Yud, Mem. When two Yidden are together, Cham, then it becomes warm. And this is the biggest pleasure by the Eibishter. When Yidden Fabring, that's the idea of the Fabringen, say L'chaim, and each one wishes each other, So now it's a time to say l'chaim after Yontif, that everyone, whoever, whatever they need, the bakoshes that they ask the whole month of Tishrei should be mamshich al kol hashon kula. Now there's another letter here talking about wine. Somebody asked the Rebbe. He says like this. I mean, this is I have here what he wrote, and the Rebbe answered. He says to the Rebbe, I go to Farbringen. He doesn't understand Farbringen anything, but he says, I see that you speak for so many hours. Sometimes a half an hour, sometimes an hour, and in between, you're also busy. Why do you have to say l'chaim on wine in the middle? Why can't you speak a half an hour, rest, let the people sing, and then speak again? But why do you have to say l'chaim on wine? That's what he has the Rebbe. And each one, as we know by Farbringen, there was no, by the Rebbe never leaned back once by Farbringen. If you remember, never leaned back. He didn't relax. This was a Farbringen. So why do you have to? What's the reason for that? So the Rebbe answered like this: a Farbringen is a time of brachas, to give brachas. That's a Farbringen. And he says and the Rebbe says, Mitzvah Shabbos, we say, now it's Mitzvah Shabbos, we say, V'yitel cholekim mitala shomayim. This was the blessings that Yitzchak gave to Yaakov Avinu. But before the blessings, in order that the blessing should be chal, a blessing, he had to state Vayochal, Yitzchak ate, Vayesht, and he drank, and it says Vayovel Yayin, he bought wine, Vayevorachehu, and then you blessed him. That means that the blessings can come down only when you say l'chaim, when you drink wine. That's why the Rebbe. So we see here that a Farbringen is not just a Farbringen that the Rebbe speaks. A Farbringen is a time of giving brachas, and that's why the world needed brachas. And we know how many hours, thousands of hours in the Rebbe's lifetime, how much he Farbringed whole time. So if Farbringen is wine, and bedavke wine, because wine is like Yitzchak, that he had to say the brachas, but he had to first drink wine. So since now it's after Tishrei, we're coming to the month of Cheshvan, which no holidays in Cheshvan, but we're coming from Tishrei. And I want to end off with that one word for Rebbe, because we just had the last week Yom Kippur. The Rebbe mentions over here, why do we read about Arayas by Mincha on Yom Kippur? Is that the time to read about Arayas? The Rebbe says over here. I mean, here we're like malachim, we're like angels. Yom Kippur from Kol Nidrei after Rosh Hashanah, then the Aseret Mitzvah, and now Yom Kippur after Kol Nidrei, and we're already by the end by Nila before the gates close. That is the time to mention about Arayas. Could have read it in the morning, but why Yom Kippur? So the Rebbe says over here something very interesting. He says, today's Yom Kippur. You're holy. You feel holy today, but you have to know in a few hours it's going to be after Yontif. You're going into this physical world, the world of Arayas. So the Kippur reminds you, Akunz to be holy now, fine, but you have to know that take this holiness into the weekdays, into every single day. So you should know that reminded you it's not just you're holy and that's it, but it reminds you that now soon it's going to be the weekdays, so you shouldn't forget that you're going into a Gashmisdike world. Something like that. The Rebbe answers something very, very interesting. So the Rebbe says, the that all the brachas should be mekuyim, and Shabbos Breishis today we just read that Rebbe Hashem. Next week we'll continue our program, our Mitzvah Shabbos program. Thank you.